Hard, heavy, and hair. Badass music for badass listeners. With Pariah Burke.
Jason Fellman, welcome to the Hard, Heavy, and Hair Show. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
You are the titan of tributes.
I like that. I haven't heard that one yet. Titan of tributes.
Yeah, you've got multiple festivals that you do. You've got HareFest, and you're wearing the shirt, and I'm wearing the Appetite for Deception, one of your former headlining bands.
Yeah, one of the
who
OG.
just retired.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses tribute band.
Yeah, those guys are the best.
So tell us about HareFest. What is it?
So HareFest is, we bill it as the mother of all tribute festivals, which we, not the most original moniker, which is because these are not the original bands. It's now a 3-day tribute band festival in Canby, Oregon, the Clackamas County Fairgrounds, and it's
which is just outside Portland.
Just outside Portland, and it's 27 tribute bands, and
wow.
The center of the programming is around classic rock, and then it tends to sort of branch out from there. So at the heart of it, you've got bands like, Def Leppard tribute, Journey tribute, Guns N' Roses, as you mentioned, we had last year, and this will be the first year we don't have those guys. And then you kind of work your way out to the fringes, everything on the Southern rock side with Whiskey River, Leonard Skinner tribute, and we've got our Eagle Eyes Eagles tribute in Alabama even this year, right? On the other side, you've got bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Grand Royale Beastie Boys, which are more on the rock, the hip hop rock side of things, and then we got metal, right, with Motor Breath, and Motley Crue, on the hair side. So it's a little bit of everything. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's like almost like a big conclave for Northwest tribute bands every year.
Nice. And so, what is Motor Breath? Who are they paying tribute?
Motor Breath does Metallica.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I mean, if we were to rip through the bands that we're covering just this year, it's Journey, Queen, Def Leppard, AC/DC, Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Tom Petty, Heart, Metallica, Van Halen, Motley Crue, Beastie Boys, Foreigner, Boston, Bon Jovi, Ozzy, Sabbath, Styx, Leonard Skinner, Scorpions, Blondie, Kiss, Alabama, The Who, Stone Temple Pilots, CCR, Hall & Oates, and the Doobie Brothers.
Wow, that is an amazing lineup.
Yeah.
And these are not, this is not just a bunch of amateur musicians coming together for a weekend. These are professional tribute bands, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, some of them are from the Portland-based area. Some are from Seattle, British Columbia, Queen Nation, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think they're based in multiple cities. They kind of have guys everywhere, Los Angeles and down the Southwest. So the bands are really, really good, and the production. So the sound and the lights and the stages, that's the big thing about this, is that, part of the tribute experience is you're supposed to sort of have this suspension of disbelief. And in order to have that, you've got to have high quality sound and lights. You go, oh yeah, I would expect to see, Bon Jovi with kick-ass sound and lights, right? It would look silly if we were up on like a park stage with some park hands and, I mean, we got three nights. At the end of the night, we got laser shows, which are outdoors with our closing bands this year. So, we really, try to create a complete experience, and all the people who provide production for our event are pro level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it shows, I believe.
And folks, I can actually attest to this. I've been to HareFest a few times. I have watched these bands. I've heard them. I've been center stage. I know a lot of the musicians playing in these bands. This is as good as any original band festival. These tribute bands, their musicianship, but also the quality, like Jason was just saying, the quality of the production is as good as M3 on M3 or Rocklahoma or any other festival.
What's interesting about tribute bands that people don't necessarily think about at face value is that they have a burden that the actual original bands never had, which is that when you see a tribute band, you're expecting to hear what was on the album, right?
Yeah.
And many of the bands that play in the eras to which we're covering couldn't even do them live in their prime. You know what I mean? Like there was, especially in the 80s, as you know, there was sort of this unspoken competition among singers to see who could get the highest. Steve Perry talks about this. And it created this unsustainable, I mean, for every one guy like Mickey Thomas who can still do it, you got another, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, who can't sing the notes anymore, right? And so,
Oh, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem throwing somebody under the bus. I've seen the Motley Crue tribute band Dr. Crew play live.
That's where I
And
was going.
folks, they're playing their instruments. They're
Yes.
actually singing. I've seen the soundboard. They're not running a laptop,
No.
which, there's been allegations against the real Crew. But, and these are people jumping around doing the full stage show. The Van Halen tribute band, the David Lee Roth singer, jumps around as much as David Lee Roth in his prime and never misses a note.
Yeah. And people don't expect it. That one of the things we have in the tribute band that does Van Halen for HareFest is called Best of Both Worlds, and it's cool because they have both singers. They have a Sammy Hagar, so they take turns and they can do like the whole era. They're actually the
That's
closing
fantastic.
party this year. The closing set. They're the only 90-minute set in the entire festival, and you need it with those two eras, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
people can debate which era they like the best, right? But you can't deny that there were tons of amazing songs in both eras and that they have a huge catalog. So it's like, I mean, doing a 60-minute Van Halen set's tough.
Yeah. And so is that what everybody said is, other than Best of Both Worlds at 60 minutes?
Yeah, so every set in the festival is 60, right? So everybody plays an hour with the exception of 3 sets. The one set is, and they're all the nighttime, the final sets, because they're the laser sets. So the first night has a 75, and the second night has a 75, third night's a 90. So those are the 3 longer sets. And they start at 11, so it's not crazy late, because we're also a little bit older than we used to be. So I say that 12:30 is the new 2 a.m. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like everybody's ready to hit the sack.
And you offer camping on site, right? So
Yeah,
if
so
people do stay that late, they don't have to drive home.
we have thousands of people. I think over 3,000 this year will spend the night. The thing about spending the night is that like all the vehicle overnight spaces have already sold out, right? They sell out like within minutes of going on sale. So all the tent camping and the van camping and all that. But I think we have like 50 campsites left, and that's it.
Oh, wow.
So, and then all the camping bundles are sold out, and then you just have to get on. You can get into the camping area with a festival pass, but you have to have a place to stay. Like you have to have a site. So, those sold out last year, so they'll sell out again. But it's cool because it's like this sort of big summer camp vibe, right? That's why we're doing Thursday night programming and why we're starting to do programming. I mean, programming starts at I think 11 o'clock on Friday morning, and it goes
Wow.
till 12:15 a.m. And then the next morning it starts up at 9 a.m. and goes till 1 a.m.
Okay, so I guess with those times, I got to ask the all important question. How do you get professional musicians up to play at 9 a.m.?
Well, they're staying there, so you can go rattle the camper. But it's funny though. I will tell you though, along those lines, one of the fun things about HareFest is that, and maybe it's like this with real festivals, I don't know, but there's a little bit of a friendly competitive spirit that everybody wants to bring their A game. So I think people are willing to they know that whether you're playing at 9 a.m. or at midnight, you're going to have a big audience. The breakfast has thousands of people. When you go on at 9 o'clock, there are already thousands of people there. So you're going to get a good audience no matter when you are in the festival. But not that hard to get people motivated, but usually it's because they stay on site. That helps. Well, and this year we've got Mark Thomas. So speaking of appetite for deception, so Mark Thomas is the lead singer of Steelhorse. And so while that band isn't back with its full membership and gigging, at least at this point, I essentially pitched him on the idea of doing a Bon Jovi unplugged set in the morning because we wanted to do breakfast with Bon Jovi, right?
Nice.
And so, and the thing about that is that when the real Bon Jovi does the unplugged sets, he does these different orchestrations of the songs, and so they're not as high pitched, right? I mean, he lowered them, and so it's like it's more feasible to do them at 9 in the morning. If Mark had to roll out there at 9 a.m. and sing like regular Bon Jovi, Mark could probably do it, but no one would want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in this case, he doesn't have to. You know what I mean? And so the guy who's got it a little bit tougher is because they're doing it as a trio. So Jim Smoltz, who's also the Eddie Van Halen, he's got the trickiest situation because he has got to get up and do the 9 a.m. set with Mark as the Richie Sambora. Then at the very end of the night with Best of Both Worlds, 11 p.m. So 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. on the same day are his two sets.
And so he plays Eddie Van Halen's parts?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But he brings his RV. He'll be sleeping on site. He'll go take a nap sometime during the day. I mean, it's one weekend out of our life, so we all just kind of figure we'll sleep after.
Yeah. And I bet a lot of the attendees are the same way.
Yeah, it's I have to admit, I mean, at the risk of sounding insensitive to our attendees, it's like if some people are complaining about the, oh, it's hard to sleep over here because it's too loud or whatever. I'm like, I mean, we'll do our best to, enforce our quiet hours over there in the camping area, but it's a rock festival.
Right.
Well, people who are partying like they're 30 years younger, but they're not. So it's just a situation, you know what I mean? We don't run into like safety situations, like people aren't getting injured and stuff like that. It's more a matter of like, you get into the zone, you hear the music, and all of a sudden you're transported back to your, teens or your 20s. But you can't go that hard, 30 years, 40 years later, you know what I mean? You got to pace yourself. And so, if there's anything, that's the dynamic. You know what I mean? It's like, because think about it, we've got 27 bands across 3 days. It's a marathon. Yeah.
That is a lot of bands.
All playing an hour. There's no short sets, you know what I mean? Like, so.
And they're back to back. You've got multiple stages, and as one band wraps up, the next band starts. Then you're transitioning the stage to the next band, right?
A qualified, yes, which is in the main venue over on that side where the two side-by-side stages are. Yes, they literally just alternate without any space in between. However, on the Hippie Hollow stage over in the Treat area, and part of the reason why we've chosen to activate that area so much during the day, like you'll notice we've got some of our absolute best bands over playing in Hippie Hollow, and people are like, why do you have them playing on that stage and blah blah. I think, no, you don't understand. That's where you want to be during the day because the sun's coming down, right? So for the audience's sake, it puts everybody among the trees with some more natural shade. So that's part of the calculus of using that stage during the day. The other thing is that something you haven't seen, but you might have seen if you were at the old Pat's Acres location, is that we're bringing back the overhead shade covers.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah. So we're getting a huge one, so it'll cover the standing pit for both stages, and then some because of the way the direction of the sun goes. So and we've already got we have a new another misting sponsor coming on board, so we're expanding. We already had a ton of misting last year and cooling stations. We're having more of it this year, plus the shade cover, plus more programming over in Hippie Hollow when the sun's coming straight down on you. So we're hoping that those dynamics will help people be a little more comfortable throughout the festival.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that sounds like it'll really make people comfortable, especially since we're talking, was it July 18th, 19th,
and
20th? Yeah. So kind of in the middle of summer there.
Yeah, pretty long days. Yeah.
So what else can people expect at the HareFest Festival? What do you got? Do you have food? Do you have drink? Do you have?
Yeah, I mean,
vendors?
there's a big area that's just of food vendors all festival long. We actually have the Wild Hare makes a breakfast buffet on Saturday morning. It sells out. It's already 2/3 sold out, but it's a really awesome breakfast buffet. But we'll have breakfast vendors there too, coffee vendors throughout the day. We've got ice cream coming this year. But we have, things like barbecue, burgers, I mean, Thai food, you name it, it's just like across the board. We always get good food. It's not your typical sort of what is called fair food. It's more like, hey, we're in the Northwest, we're kind of foodies out here, so let's get it, so that's reflected in the food choices. And we try to go local as much as we can. There are a lot of great vendors right out there in Canby. Like Ebner's has been with us for years. Ebner's Meats, who's right there in Canby. So, when we have a local option, we always try to lean that way. Canby's been good
Yeah.
to us, so we try to recognize that. It's
Well, that's great that you're so local focused as well.
Yeah, I mean, we complain about Live Nation, and in that whole dynamic, with its impact on some of our national level festivals, but it can also be an advantage if you're a local, entity, because I think at least in the Northwest anyway, I think people have this sort of buy local mentality. I know we give it a lot of lip service, but I think it's reflected in our sales. Um, so I think people appreciate, having the local options when we can bring them in.
Now, you mentioned sales, and you've said thousands of people. This is not a small festival. This is not a backyard deal.
It's about 10,000 people is about the number,
Wow.
across 3 days. And the average per day is anywhere from 6 to 7,000. We won't really go up past that, with this property. We actually added a lot more camping space. So we have the entire Clackamas County Fairgrounds and Event Center, like the whole thing. And we're
Which
basically,
is a pretty good sized piece of property.
yeah, it's wonderful. And I've got to tell you, they're awesome to work with. Like they've been really cool. I mean, and all of our partners have been great. Pat Akers was fantastic. But so we really lucked out with our venue partners. But Clackamas County Fairgrounds have been, I don't know. I guess I had perceptions about fairgrounds that have really been sort of reset completely from my experience. You know what I mean? Like just everything from the management and the people who are running things and their level of engagement to the quality of the facilities, the responsiveness. It's the same thing in Flannel Fest. So we have a 90s Flannel Fest, which is like the 90s version of HareFest that takes
Okay.
place in Moses Lake, Washington, at the Grant County Fairgrounds in Moses Lake on October 4th and 5th. So it's going to be our third year. And we haven't announced the lineup yet, but as the name suggests, it's like on the bands we've had in previous couple of years, like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Weezer, the Cranberries, No Doubt,
Oh, wow.
Tool, Beastie Boys. We have Metallica, Blink 182, Green Day. Who else am I forgetting? We've had Rage Against the Machine. So it's Stone Temple Pilots. So it's interesting because the whole event is again, it's the same kind of thing. In this particular case, it's actually a partnership with the Grant County Fairgrounds. In a 50-50 deal there. We produce it together with them. And again, a great partner. And a lot of facilities that are already ready to go, and in an area that's kind of an intersection of different cities. So, and most importantly, the weather is still good at the beginning of October. First 2 years, it's been sunny in the mid 70s.
Oh, nice. That
Yeah.
makes for a much more enjoyable festival.
Yeah, and it's flannel at night. So you like shorts during the day, you get your cargo shorts on,
Yep.
right? And then at night you get your flannels on, and you're full grunge at that point. Perfect.
Do you get them? So I haven't been to this. Do you get a mosh pit and everything?
Oh yeah, yeah. People do what you would expect. Yeah, if the music calls for it, it happens.
Right
It's
on.
weird because it's like literally like almost like it's like exactly 10 years younger than HareFest. Like the whole dynamic, you know what I mean? The youngest people are 10 years younger, the oldest people are 10 years younger, you know what I mean? It's like it really looks a lot like HareFest 2 did. Even the numbers are tracking about the same, like the turnouts.
Wow.
So it's a trip, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna throw this idea out there. Feel free to take it. Have Have you thought of an '80s inspired festival? And I know you've got a number of tribute bands like Blondie
Uh-huh.
and Duran Duran that would, and I don't remember the band's names, but I know they pay tribute to Blondie and to Duran
Yeah,
Duran.
we've got Talking Heads and Depeche Mode,
Yeah,
The Cure, In Excess. We've got a Morrissey. So to answer your question is, at the risk of being coy about it, yes, we have absolutely thought of that. I think it's an awesome idea, and I would say that the likelihood of that happening sooner than later is very high.
I think I think that will be a great addition to your lineup because you, like you said, you've got you got HareFest, then you go 10 years back in the age group to the
Yep.
90s Flannel Fest, but then the 80s, uh, they
80,
say things are cyclic and decades make a resurgence, but the 80s came back about 20 years ago and it never left. The
it definitely
appreciation of
has,
the 80s.
really has staying power. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And my perception of things, at least as far as looking at tribute band goes, is it seems like the wheelhouse for tribute bands seems to remain the same even as society ages, right? I think this is kind of what you're alluding to with 80s music, is that if you look at the 70s it's basically the 70s to the 90s. And maybe I'm just biased because I'm 51, so this is kind of my thing. But 70s to 90s, in part because of the way music was created and the nature of the business, you know what I mean? These were sort of the mature years before it lost its innocence, so to speak, and the internet
Yeah.
came along and really changed the whole, structure of how artists can or can't make money and what the audiences value out of their, all that, sort of changed. I'm not going to say it's better or worse, but in the tribute band world, what fuels it are things that, that were attributes of bands and their audiences during the 70s to the 90s. And so it remains there. Like 70s is still really popular. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And 90s is the area. The 80s, like you said, it just seems like when it arrived, it just seems to just sit there, right?
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's in the middle of that whole thing. It's like the center of it, with the 70s and the 90s on each side. Um, I will say we're seeing more traction just around the Northwest as a promoter. I'm seeing an increase in demand for ticket sales for 90s related acts over the last 18 months, I would say. So
Interesting.
that's interesting. So and also like interest from traditional clients that might have traditionally steered away from the 90s, like county fairs and things like that, might have historically booked more in the 70s and the 80s spheres, are now looking at everything from Nirvana to Foo Fighters and Chili Peppers, and so clearly there's some adoption there as the target demographic for these sort of larger institutionalized events is moving up in years, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Generation X was in their 20s in the 90s. Millennials were in high school getting into the music of the 90s.
Yep.
You had the baby boom generation was still appreciating music in the 90s.
Yep.
And I think, to add to what you were saying about this age of innocence and people being interested in it, I think also it was a matter of, a lot of us were too young to go see all the bands we wanted to see. We never got that opportunity. I personally missed Prince. You get these Facebook memes that go around, who would you bring back for one more show? I would love to have seen Prince live. I never got to see Prince. Um, you know, I also never got to see Duran Duran, and I liked Duran Duran. I still do. I got to see them at HareFest. I got to see their music at HareFest.
Yeah.
And that works for me. I know it's not the actual Duran Duran, but the music sounds the same as it does on my CDs. It sounds the same as it did on FM in the 80s. So, this is a great experience to get to see an act that I couldn't see before. You've got some bands like Barracuda, the Heart tribute band.
Yeah. Oh, so
They
good.
Heart doesn't play like that anymore. And that's DL Carr and Sarah Moon on lead vocals. There are members of Bad Company in the real Bad Company band,
Yeah.
in the Barracuda band.
Yeah.
So you've got you got some amazing musicians playing this. These are
There's some
not weekend warriors.
really great players. Yeah. It's actually kind of intimidating for, as a musician, because you're like, oh, that guy is pretty good. uh, there are a lot of, but you know what? Everybody's cool. You always learn something, you know what I mean? Like half the fun of, and you probably saw a little bit of this backstage last year. It's like drummers geeking out on the other drummers drum sets, like, oh man, what heads you got on there,
Yeah.
or what I mean, there's a lot of that going on, or the guitar players like, oh, what strings are you using on that, you know what I mean, like, oh, I love what you were doing on that song, how does that work? So there's a probably, as it is with the real bands too, there's a lot of sort of mutual sort of appreciation of what everybody's doing, and it is hard to reproduce what these things sounded like on the album. Man, I think about like the Def Leppard tribute. You know what I mean? I mean, it's crazy that those
Yeah.
guys are doing that.
Yeah.
But they are.
Hysteria.
Yeah, Hysteria. But they do it. It's the same, actually, it's the same guys who do Dr. Crew. Like it's the same singer, bass player, and guitar player in Dr. Crew as it is for Hysteria. So it's literally the guy does Joe Elliott, and then he turns around and does Vince Neil.
Which is, I mean, there's some notes that are similar, but those are two different voices, and he
Really
just does a great job.
types, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. A lot of these guys are skilled. Mark Thomas, a lot of Rich Ray is another one of those guys. Rich Ray, who is, everybody, of course, remembered from Ramble On. He sings for Jukebox Heroes. He also sings for Super Unknown, the Soundgarden tribute. And he sings for Who's Next, the Who tribute that we have at HareFest. So we're going to see Rich Ray doing Roger Daltrey. And I'm telling you, it's awesome. He sounds just like him. The whole band's awesome.
I'm looking forward to that. I haven't caught them yet anywhere, and I'm a big Who fan, so I'm really looking forward to that.
It's one of those bands where all the members play in so many other higher profile projects that they don't get time to play out as much. But it's all like really great musicians. I'm kind of excited. I like the Who. I think that'll be a good vibe for HareFest, especially earlier in the day. I think people will dig it. That's good. Sun's kind of winding down in the afternoon kind of music. I think it'll be great.
Yeah. So okay, I got to ask you this one question. So I normally don't call people out, but he said it on an interview with me, so he should be fine with me calling him out. Lead singer of Spread Eagle, Ray West, calls tribute bands rock and roll cosplay. How do you respond to that?
I think that there's at least a layer of accuracy to that, right? So, like I would say, here's how I've always described it. It's a lot like you're playing characters in a plotless musical, right? You're playing characters you didn't create, singing songs you didn't write for audiences who appreciate that, right? And it's sort of no more, no less. So, it is cosplay. You're dressing up. So, he's technically accurate. I've been dealing with this, this weird sort of, vibe that some people have with tribute bands for so long that I've sort of gone full circle on it, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to really bother me, right? And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, of course, like pretty much anytime you dislike something, it's generally more of a reflection on you than it is on the thing you dislike, just in general. You know what I mean? 3, it's like not everybody has to like everything. You know what I mean? It's like, if you think about it, even the most popular artist in the world, which I guess would be Taylor Swift, right? Still has billions of hate. But billions of people don't like her, right? So it's like, well, of course, with tribute bands, there's going to be 8% of the population who just looks at that and goes, screw these guys. They're a bunch of posers, or they couldn't make it on their own, or whatever sort of thing they want to assign to it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And also, this probably isn't for you. You know what I mean? You're not in on it. You know what I mean? I don't like mushrooms. Lots of people do. So, I tend not to get too bent out of shape about it, because I think the negative opinions are as valid as they are, when people don't like the original band. So I guess I would say makes a point.
Well, I look at it as the same way that people were talking about the Kiss farewell tour last year, or the last couple of years, wrapped up last year. Does Paul Stanley sing like he did when he was 25? No. Are they using backing tracks? Maybe. But the idea was, maybe they're doing that, but I want to see the music played the way I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I want to see the original band playing it if at all possible. Well, Kiss was only 2 original guys. But Kiss isn't playing anymore unless you count the holograms. So you want to see good Kiss music played live, then, well, go to HareFest. There's a Kiss tribute band at HareFest.
Yeah. It's a really simple equation. Like if you like this music, and the added benefit is that the thing that you don't anticipate when you go to something like HareFest is you don't anticipate the culture of the event and how fun that piece of it is, right? I mean, over the years, people have really formed a bond around the event. It literally is like going to summer camp. And once a year, you see these same people, you know what I mean? And you get to know them and people look out for one another. My favorite stories are the one where, maybe someone was in a wheelchair, couldn't get the view they wanted, and people just
Yep.
hoist them up, you know what I mean? And get them right to the front and take care of them. It's like, that's how it should be. Music is supposed to be unifier. I know politically we are all over the place, right? Heck, we announced a Pride event, right? And there were a few people who are like, "Arr." It's like, well, all right, that's not your thing, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's like music is supposed to bring people together. And, I really feel like that's embodied in the spirit of the event. We see it all the time there. It's, people can leave all that stuff behind for 3 days. And I feel like they do a good job of it. It's cool. I like it.
So you mentioned the Pride. So this is Pride Amplified. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Pride Amplified, we just announced it. Tickets go on sale this Friday, June 15th is the event. And it's a Pride event that we're a party that we're producing in partnership with 503 Distilling, which is one of our sponsors and drink providers for our other festivals, for HareFest and for the 90s Flannel Fest. And so we're doing this over at their headquarters, and we've got 3 acts playing. It's gonna be we're going total dance party vibes. We've got Ursabom, which is a duo that plays 80s dance hits. And then we've got Hiding from Love, which is a Depeche Mode tribute. And then we're closing it down with Band After Midnight, an ABBA tribute. And these tributes are with recognizable characters from our tribute community. So, for example, Hiding from Love, the lead singer is Lawrence Orlek, who happens to be the Lindsey Buckingham in Taken by the Sky Fleetwood Mac tribute. And he is the David Byrne, I kid you not, in Life During Wartime, which is a super popular Talking Heads tribute in the Northwest, right? So he's that guy.
That's
So
quite a range, though.
yeah, and he nails it. So he's just a really gifted performer and musician. He really and they're really like big on the details. And then the ABBA tribute, it's 2 of the key players are Jessa Campbell, who's the Stevie Nicks from the Fleetwood Mac tribute,
Okay.
and the other female singer is being covered by Liz from Glass of Hearts, who does the Debbie Harry. So we've got 2 powerhouse vocalists in that band, the ABBA band, and they're doing all the synchronized dance moves and stuff. So that's outdoors, June 15th at 503 Distilling in southwest Portland. It's right off the Max line, which is killer. Like there's literally a Max stop, you get off, and there's the entrance. It's just really sweet. So that's harefest.com/pride is where we have that housed.
Okay. So is there a central location, a central website where everyone can keep up with all of the festivals? And, maybe should that 80s festival happen to
Yeah,
materialize,
I
they
mean,
could
the
find out?
funny thing is, you would think that through HareFest we have that organized, but we don't. So the best place to look is actually at jfell.com. That's my promoter site. That has everything. So it's j-fell.com. That's the JFell Presents website, and that's got everything. If it's from any of the things we book through Sterling Talent or shows through JFell Presents or through the HareFest events, those all end up on that calendar.
Okay, great. Great. So you've got a busy year coming up. What else is going on for you other than these festivals that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the festivals are, we're in kind of a key time there because we're doing the announcement. We're about, in the beginning of April, we'll announce the Flannel Fest lineup, right? And those will go on sale. And then, you can kind of see that we have various, series across the Northwest, going into the summer. I'm also, there's a new venue opening up in Lake Oswego. In a place that used to be called At the Garages. The new location is the Headliners Club, with new owners, new business model, and I'm actually going to be the booker for that room. So it's a really nice 400 to 500 capacity room, a nice big stage. It's right off I-5 across from Bridgeport Village. It's got plenty of
Okay.
parking. So we're going to be opening that up with music. We'll announce in a couple of days, but or maybe early next week. But it'll be open up the March 29th. Will be the first date under the new venue name when it opens. So that's pretty exciting. It's taking up a lot of our time because we're organizing music for every weekend. And then I play in 4 bands. So I'm getting kind of that going. I play drums in Stone and Love Journey tribute. So our season starts in June, and then we play just through the end of August, and then we'll be off for another year. We go in fits and starts. 'Cause our guitar player lives around the world, so I think he'll be living in Europe during that time. And then I play drums in Hall & Bros and Red Light Romeos. So the Red Light Romeos is a 70s cover band. We do like super sounds of the 70s. And Hall & Bros is Hall & Oates and Doobie Brothers tribute. And so
In the same set.
yeah, we basically go in and out of Hall & Oates and Doobie Brothers all. It's a 6-piece with 5 lead singers. And it's actually cool for me because I'm the drummer, right? And it's the first time in my professional career that I have not had to sing and play drums at the same time. First time ever. I mean, I am in heaven. But there's plenty of singers, so we have a show coming up with that, and that one plays on. And then I play rhythm guitar, and I'm one of the lead singers in Radical Revolution '80s tribute. So that fires up in a couple of weeks. We're headlining the Bent Winter Fest Subaru thing, and then we have the Kennedy School prom coming up in May. So my actual gigging season is starting up in a couple of weeks, basically. There's a lot going on. But BC Alternative, gotta.
Yep.
I find myself complaining about being busy, and I'm like, that's not cool at all, man. I mean, I'm in music and I'm busy. I should count my blessings and just say, hey, I'm lucky this is going on. I'm just gonna roll with it while I can.
Better in 2020, right?
Dude, I mean, yeah, we must have canceled. I think I want to say it was 940 different cancellations between our various companies.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a huge spreadsheet of them. It's like I keep it around. I keep a link to it as a reminder. You know what I mean? But what was interesting about it is that it was so weird to have such a certain outcome. You know what I mean? Like after we realized that nothing was happening, it was really interesting in a business where you're constantly like, wait, I got to confirm this, or wait, no, is that, or we got to hold here, or whatever. You know, you got to sort of like everything's ebbing and flowing. All of a sudden, it was just like nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, God, easy day, no decisions, no income, but no decisions. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't miss it, but it was an interesting learning experience, I guess you would say. Not to learn from again.
All right, I got one last question for you.
Sure.
So there are tribute bands everywhere, okay? And there's even a couple of other tribute festivals with a lot smaller attendance, a lot smaller lineups. What makes Portland, Oregon the perfect city for tribute bands? And I also want to point out, if you're listening and you're not familiar with the tribute bands in Portland, it's not just the festivals. They're doing every weekend. There's multiple clubs with the bands that Jason manages and promotes playing, headlining shows and supporting gigs. It's not just the festivals. So what makes Portland the perfect city for tribute bands?
I mean, I'm not sure that it's any more perfect than any other city. I think that we've just had the development of a community around it, and a series of best practices around it. I think the tribute bands learned how my favorite saying with tribute bands is it's a lot easier to hit a home run when you're starting on third base. And it's like that's like a tribute band in a nutshell, right? So, a lot of it is just having a sense of awareness about what it is, what you're starting from, and making sure that you promote around that. I mean, I would even tell clients sometimes for my own bands, I'm like, if you're limited on space, I'm actually okay if you say featuring a tribute to Journey rather than featuring Stone and Love. You know what I mean? Because Journey is what's selling it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's
I
the
mean,
marquee value.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, if the real bands came along and they said, "Hey, we're not cool with this," then we'd have to stop doing it. You know what I mean? But in general, whenever I talk to a real band musician, across the board, they've always said the same thing, which is, no, this is great because it means we're still relevant. You know what I mean? I'd rather
Good
have
way to
all these
look at it.
tribute. If lots of people are playing tribute bands, like that means we're still relevant. So he's like, I'd be a lot more worried if nobody wanted to have a blah 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 tribute band. And I've heard this from people in really, really big bands, potentially bands that I pay tribute to in my own band, perhaps. So
Very nice.
you know what I mean? So it's like it's a thing. Um, I think it's actually less about Portland. I think it's more a matter of like the business that's developed around it kind of happened at a formative time, and it's sustained to a certain extent. I'd argue that it's oversaturated now, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, given the attendance at HareFest, I don't think so. I think there is a lot of appetite for tribute bands that are done well, that are presented well, like you said, with good quality stage lighting, excellent sound systems, a good environment. The way you've set up HareFest, I think it does a really good job.
I appreciate it. I do think the nice thing about HareFest is that, ultimately it sort of transcends a tribute band concert. It really is it's like an experience. Like, what I mean? There's an energy about it. It's also, like you said, it is a trip because you're seeing a lot, like there are bands I'm like, oh, I never would have seen this band. I wasn't going to see Boston live, but man, third stage, they sound and look just like Boston, and on the album, no less. Man, my jaw was dropping. Like, how are these guys singing Brad Delp? You know what I mean? I'm just like, what? But they do it. So that it's just the whole vibe and the experience. It's interesting. We did a little. We did a sort of. I don't want to say an experiment, but we're always observing different elements of our shows, whether it's things that are quantitative, like numbers, like what drinks people are buying or what time they're buying them or what bar they're buying them from, right? But we also look at sort of more like qualitative things, like what are people doing throughout the event? Like what's their behavior, what's their body language, so I'll just go out there and I'll just kind of with that mindset saying, well, how's everybody doing right now during this band? What's going on? Anyway, what we discovered about 70s and 80s music in particular is that when people are consuming the concert, they're very interactive with one another, right? Versus at a 90s concert, right? Where they're having a very high level engagement as well, but their engagement is more between them and the stage in front of them. The drinks in hand, right? Similar alcohol numbers, but this person is not, whoa, living on a prayer high five. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You're not getting that. It's more like the intensity, man in the box. You know what I mean? It's just like, you're kind of like, and it's true. Like if I did this, like I took that experiment further, and I did like one of my early 90s shows, like pre-COVID, where we had the 3 tribute bands and it was at Dante's, and I was like, all right, I want to see what happens. I went in there thinking I was observing revenue per attendee because I wanted to know what the buying power of the 90s audience was. But what was really more informative was the behavior of what was going on between them. That's why we're really judicious about how much 90s we have at HareFest. The bands we do have from the 90s are bands like Metallica. You don't think of it as it's not 90s energy. It's sort of unique, right?
Yeah.
Chili Peppers and Beastie Boys, right? That's party energy. You know what I mean? But you start, you introduce something that's too straight ahead right into the middle of the event. It'll change the energy. So I can't remember how I got on that subject, but it's interesting to kind of see all the behaviors and stuff and what happens.
Yeah, it is. And it's very interesting that you're also keeping an eye on that you're watching and managing that energy flow, kind of like a DJ in a club.
I think that's part of being an event producer. I mean, it's the same thing as a marketer, again, without sounding creepy. One of the advantages to having a role as a promoter and a booking agent for a high percentage of the bands in the region is that I have visibility into the social media interactions across all the pages. You know what I mean? So I've got maybe 40 pages that I'm an admin on, right? So I can see the messages that come in, where they're getting tagged, what's happening on their post. I can see it all. You can see the patterns and the waves. But it gives you an interesting sort of a scene level insight. You know what I mean? You can almost, like, if you're paying attention to it and if you can synthesize all the information, just sort of intrinsically, you'll see like, like when we first started, we looked at like audiences, sort of overlapping concentric circles of audiences. So like we started out with Journey, right, at the Aladdin, sold that out. And then all of a sudden the next show was Appetite, sold that out. And we looked around there like, well, there's about 20% overlap here, right? Then the next one was Bon Jovi, right? And you can see the little Venn diagram making itself, right?
Yep.
Right? Because Bon Jovi was the intersection between Journey and Guns N' Roses. A little bit of heavy, a little bit of sappy, right? Just kind of, right? And it really went from there, right? That's so we thought about the development of the tribute scene. We were thinking more about it from the intersection of audiences rather than, thinking about it from necessarily from the musical side even. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess it's all tied together, but it's like if the audience overlaps, that's really what matters the most, because that's how a scene grows organically.
Right.
And if you go too far out of it, sometimes after a while, we got to this thing where it's like, well, I can manage more than one island, so we have the rock island over here. And now we're working on like the new, like to your point earlier, working on the new wave island, you know what I mean? And eventually and we've got the 90s band island, you know what I mean? And at some point they'll intersect, but right now they're kind of separate, you know what I mean? Southern rock, it seems to be the glue between some things potentially. We'll see. You know what I mean? So you're always kind of looking at that. That's more of the sort of the thinking side of the tribute business. You know what I mean? If you just sort of like are thinking about like why we make decisions or whatever, these are some of the things that kind of like I try to kind of think about.
Right on. So, okay, I know I said one last question. Let me ask you just one more based off
Yeah,
of
no,
that.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Any advice for new bands that want to break into this scene? Other than, hey, come to me, I'll be your promoter. Any other advice?
Well, actually, that would not be my advice. I would say, don't come to me until you got everything that you need to have. You know what I mean? I think the main thing is that you have to realize that at this point you're jumping into a crowded space, right? So I think a lot of people pick bands because they either haven't been done yet or because they really like them. The first thing I would look at, because the success or failure of a tribute band, most of it comes from your very first decision, which is the band you're going to cover, right? I have a formula, right, that has not let me down after all these years. I will share it with your audience.
Please.
Okay, so I call this the theoretical draw equation, right? So basically what I do is I take the real band, right? So let's say, let's start with the Cult, right?
Okay.
Great band, right? Together share, 4, 5, 6 hits, some hits in there, right? Good band, right?
Yep.
The Cult, right? The Cult actually is still playing, and when they play, they'll play in a venue that's about 150, on average, maybe a 1,500 cap room, right? That's about what they're 1,500, right? So what I do is I'll take 10% of the cap of where the band either plays or would play if they still existed, and that's the theoretical limit on how many tickets you're going to sell as a headliner. So if we look at the Cult, if they're playing at 1,500 cap rooms, then a Cult tribute's probably good on their best day for about 150 tickets, which holds up. Okay, let's contrast that with AC/DC, right? AC/DC will roll into a 20,000 cap arena, no problem, sell it out, right? You could probably sell 2,000 tickets to a really good AC/DC tribute show, right? Led Zeppelin, they don't exist, but they would be playing out at the at the amphitheater. It's about 20, you know what I mean? So you get it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, are you a Crystal Ballroom band or are you a Moda Center band? You know what I mean? And that's the thing. So if your band, like, another great example is Stone Temple Pilots. I love the Stone Temple Pilots. Way underrated. Same with Loverboy, right? Both these bands have like tons of hits. People don't realize how many good hits they have, and probably something about their image held them back. Like Loverboy should have been way bigger. And if you look at their catalog, it's actually awesome. But people didn't take them seriously as musicians because they had this corny image and the name was Loverboy. Those dudes ripped it up, right? Mike Reno was a crazy singer at his prime. But anyway, I digress. Those bands are playing in the 1,500 cap rooms, the Roseland, which again, great venues, nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing a tribute band, take 10% of that. That's the starting point. Then you want to look at, okay, is there an entrenched artist, right? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, do you want to go head to head with Super Diamond? You know, the Neil Diamond front or something. You know what I mean? It's like you have to look at like, okay, what am I up against, right?
Yep.
And the third thing is it's all about the singer, right? In a tribute band, unless it's an instrumental tribute, which isn't making any money anyway, because you know you're not playing at the big theater there. So you know 90% of your success is your singer. You will live and die by your singer, no matter what band egos want to say about it or whatever. The reality of tribute bands is that it does not matter how good your band is if your singer is not amazing. And I have seen amazing singers drag along, you know, mediocre bands to great heights. It is that important. The rest of us are just not that important. No deference to all the Eddie Van Halens, but I know a ton of guitar players who can do it, right? How many people do you know who can do David Lee Roth? How many people can do Sammy Hagar? It's a small list.
How many people can do Ozzy in the Crazy Train band?
Dude,
That,
yeah,
that
Tim
lead
Douglas
singer
over to play
sounds
that.
and looks. Yeah. I
Yeah.
watching him on stage, I kept expecting to hear, Sharon, what's my line?
You can literally be face to face with this guy having a conversation with him, and you think he's Ozzy. He's like that
Right.
much like Ozzy.
Yeah. HareFest last year, we had that big jam. Afterward, he's off stage. He's not performing for anybody. He's just singing. And
Yeah.
he's Ozzy.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's, you know, Frank Murray, who does Tom Petty, same thing. He's like, man, that's an amazing wig. I'm like, it's not a wig. That's Frank, man. He looks like Tom Petty. That's what he looks like. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. You know, more power to the guys who can do wigs because this gets hotter than hell out there. But yeah, some of these guys they're just clearly born to play the roles. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Brandon Cook, who played Slash, he was BC Slash in Appetite for Deception.
Incredible player.
Long blonde hair, because he also plays in Black and Blue and The Loyal Order and a couple other projects. Long blonde hair, but he had to hide it under a big, heavy black wig and the top hat to be in the scorching sun to be.
So check this out. I can't remember if he was there last year or not, but Brandon now is the Randy Rhoads in Crazy Train with him. Yeah.
Yep, he is, and he's also in Jukebox Heroes.
Jukebox Heroes. Yeah. The dude's incredible. Actually, I was just getting picking pointers from him the other day.
He's great. He's actually my guitar teacher.
Yeah, no, I know. I exactly was it. Like, he was actually at his show. I'm like, hey, can I ask you a little question about the? But I mean, there's gold in them hills, man. That dude knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about, and he shreds it. You know, he's like a chameleon. When he plays Slash, he sounds like Slash. When he plays, you know, he's just really good.
Yeah, no, he's told me, he's like, what style do you want to learn? You want to learn George Lynch? I know everything about his style. I'll teach you. You know, and he stepped into Bruce Kulick's shoes in Black and Blue.
Yeah,
and just took over, and now, you know, so yeah. And
he's been there a while now. It's been a while. I think he's been in the band for, I don't know. It's been a while now. He's been there with them.
I think it's 14 years.
Yeah, I was gonna
like
say, yeah, pretty much since because that's about how long I've known him. Actually, it's funny if you look behind me. This is the very first show I did as a promoter. Was Appetite for Deception.
Oh, right on. And there's Brandon in the top hat.
Yeah, they gave me this plaque and everything, and I keep it. You know, so this was the beginning of JFL Presents. Up until then, I had only promoted bands that I was actually in, and so this was the first time that I had done a show where it was somebody else's band. So I really value that. It was just, you know, and my experience with those guys over the years has just been, we had so many amazing shows together. Still a little weird that they're not around, to be honest.
I was going to say, that must have been bittersweet for you, their final performance last year at HareFest.
Yeah, it's mostly bitter, right? But also, I know, I'm joking. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I like that they went out on top, and it happened the right way. And I was glad that we would get them a worthy, you know, moment there. I mean, they really, in my opinion, and I'm in a pretty popular tribute band, but as far as I'm concerned, Appetite Deception set the gold standard for rock tributes, at least in my universe. They're really Yeah, they always set the bar. So I like to see them. I like that they went out kicking ass. You know what I mean? That was a killer set that they had.
Yeah.
But yeah, bittersweet for sure. But you know what though? All those guys, they're all back. You know what I mean? They're all playing in other bands, so they're still going to be at HareFest. You know what I mean? Most of them are in Jukebox Heroes, and then of course Brandon plays in like 3 bands, and Andrew plays in a couple bands because he's going to be playing with Steel Horse in the trio in the morning. Andy plays with Jukebox Heroes. So we'll get to see quite a lot of those guys too. Farley plays in 2 bands because he's doing the AC/DC and the Foreigner. So that'll be cool.
Right on. All right. Well, I for one am really looking forward to HareFest 2024.
Yeah, man, we're a blast, man. I'll look forward to hanging out with you backstage, and appreciate you, giving us a shout out on your show and letting me come on here and talk about it. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a great time, man. Looking forward to seeing everybody this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And there are still tickets available.
Yes.
HareFest, HareFest.com, HareFest.com, or you can find the festival on Facebook. There's still tickets available. And if you're on the fence, I've been to this a couple of times. It's absolutely worth it. It is an amazing festival. So Jason Fellman, the J Fell in J Fell Productions, the Tycoon of Tributes. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it as well.
Remember to hear the music discussed in this interview. Stream the on-demand Hard, Heavy, and Hair show at pariahrocks.com.
That's PARIAHROCKS.com.
Also hit pariahrocks.com to stream or listen on a radio station near you. The regular 2-hour Hard, Heavy, and Hair show with me, Pariah Burke. Hard, Heavy, and Hair is your weekly dose of hard rock, heavy metal, and hair bands from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 20-teens, and today, including the latest new releases, your old favorites, and deep cuts and rare hair, along with rock news and trivia.